we have any questions before we get started?
Yeah. I feel like I should probably sort out reading. The issue of not being able to read.
Sure. So, as was pointed out last time, there is such a thing as the illiterate bard passing on tales without knowing how to read. However, given that poetry is so big a part of your character, I could also see it as he has always been able to read, and we just need to address the merit issue, in which case, if everyone else is okay with it, I can give you the merit in exchange for taking on, what is it, like a 1-point flaw? 2-point flaw? Whatever the point is for a merit.
It's a 1-point merit.
So yeah, I can give you a flaw to balance that. We can talk about that later.
All right.
Dark Fate.
Dark Fate. No.
It feels like more than a 1-point flaw. I don't know.
It is. It's
Just
like
a little
5-point
bit.
flaw.
Yeah, it's like the worst one there is, I think.
It's a fair trade.
But you can read right up until it happens. So yeah, if everyone is okay with that, Sarah, you go with him having the merit retroactively and now post tense.
I mean, it makes sense for his character.
Yeah. I don't like to make changes like that after the fact, but it was an oversight and I didn't catch it either, so we can do it. We can fix it that way, and I'll come up with a flaw for you that we can add onto your sheet afterwards.
All
It
right.
also makes sense that Bolt is alive. I mean,
Yes,
what?
Bolt is alive, and he is currently being ridden around as a war steed by one of the
One of the Gary.
werewolves.
Those sons of bitches.
We'll come back to Bolt.
Bolt shows up miraculously in York.
We'll put a pin in Bolt.
Hasn't he been harmed enough?
I was hoping someone would get to that joke.
Okay, I'm gonna get us started. So we zoom in, opening the scene, looking at a dark library, large and expansive, as a single lit lantern illuminates a small corner of the room, where we see Elenid and Cormac searching through scrolls and parchment, left behind by Gaetan de Corvo, at his well-guarded Bristol estate, which has been occupied by Jean-Marc's men. As the two of you search documents here, make a perception investigation roll, difficulty 6.
Bit of a stretch here, but should detail-oriented apply.
Absolutely. There's one, and there we go. So 3 and 5 successes. So you're both very effective in piecing over what you see here. You find many... Go ahead.
Apologies. That's not just a 5. That had a specialty in it.
Oh yeah, that's 8 successes. Okay, so you... Elenid is very quick to pick up on some of these details, though Cormac, this is definitely not lost on you. Overall, both of you determine there are many receipts here. Purchase orders for textiles, shipping fees, wages for sailors, guards, and ancillary staff. There are letters here received by other members of the former Gauntlet. Some of them are quite old, like updates from Wulfric and Siegfried of the battles fought in Normandy, movement of English and French troops in garrisons. Elenid, you recognize some of their descriptions as you were there. Some of these are more recent. Letters from Wilthrith, the Toreador of the former Gauntlet, and her concern regarding the Duke of York throwing his weight behind the Nevilles, like his brother-in-law, the Earl of Salisbury, and Salisbury's son, the Earl of Warwick. But Elenid, you're probably first to notice. There are letters here from Jean-Marc which catch your interest, but you note not for what they contain, but what they omit. There is reference here to a business which both Jean-Marc and Gaetan had vested interest in, but it's spoken of indirectly and peripherally. In some of these letters, Jean-Marc writes casually about shipment volumes and financial accounts of staggering size and value. The kind of coin being discussed sounds so outlandish, Elenid, you need to reread it to check for errors. But you verify it repeatedly. The numbers here would rival that of small nations.
She pauses as she goes over this, and without even moving away from the desk. Cormac, come here for a minute. I need to make sure I'm not misreading this.
Cormac stops searching through the books on the shelf for hidden messages and comes over to take a look.
You see what she has seen, and as you look over the accounts, you see the same numbers coming up, which just seem almost impossible.
Even if these numbers were accurate, what is the source of his funding?
That's
Certainly
a
not.
very good question.
Certainly not a familial fortune.
No, there has to be something more to it. Perhaps that's why there are guards standing outside. He doesn't want people to know.
No wonder.
And Elenid, because you got 8 successes, you know for a fact there are letters missing here. Letters that certainly would detail what exactly is going on here, as you note that there are, based on the dates, some of these letters reference other missives which are definitely not present.
Either you've already had someone take letters out of here, or Gaetan took the letters himself. There's not enough information on exactly what this is.
Or he's hidden them. We should keep looking.
Yes. Yes, we should.
You hear the sound of footsteps as you've both been working at this for almost an hour when you see Alfonso re-enters the library, now with a lit lantern of his own in one hand, looking smug and satisfied. Well, I believe I'm quite finished here. Have you found what you are looking for?
We still have some work to do. You didn't find any misplaced letters in your travels, did you?
Well, now that you mention it, there is one other place my sire favored storing documents of significance. I had nearly forgotten. He tried to keep this from me, though I detected it over time. Come, follow me.
Elenid glances over at Cormac. Should we head there, or should one of us stay behind to search this room?
You're doing well with the investigation. Maybe I'll go with him.
Very well.
Cormac nods, almost a bow, and takes off after their host. Or tag along, whichever the case may be.
Alright, you see he's already making good progress, walking off with his new lantern, back in the direction he came. And Alfonso leads you upstairs to a personal office. And you see this room is also quite decadent, with a couple more bookshelves and a desk with some ornate writing instruments, but no actual parchment on the desk itself. Although notably, behind the desk there is a wall with a painting that has been taken down and leaned up against it. And where the outline of the painting sat, you can see where the dust was settling, there is an opening, an opened metal latch, a couple feet in width and height, a safe in this hollowed out space. And as the lantern is brought up, it looks quite empty. Dear me, seems my late sire's been robbed already. What a pity. Who knows what secrets, what parcels he might have kept locked in here. And at this point he turns to you with a faint grin.
I really would like to know. How do you suppose anyone broke into the house to get into the safe, with it guarded as it is? And his eyes will drift naturally down to Alfonso's pockets and or any rucksacks he has.
He continues to smile at you. The grin actually grows over time. How indeed.
Are you sure you didn't happen upon them? If you knew this safe was here, you wouldn't leave it sit. You came here for his riches, after all. You can tell me, and I'm going to awe him.
All right.
That's charisma performance, right?
I believe so. Difficulty based on willpower. Let me just go over this yesterday.
I'm sure we did. I have a mind like a sieve.
That would be difficulty 6 then.
Wow, he's willful.
He starts to nod a few times, and then he blinks, and it seems like the attention, the rapture he was focusing on you with seems to come and go as quickly as it can. You need not play such tricks on me. I know what you require, what you look for. I have removed the documents from this safe, along with half dozen or so receipts for some cogs that my sire had invested in, and the deeds to their ownership. I have hidden the documents in this manner where neither you nor Jean-Marc's lackeys shall ever find them. But you are fortunate, and that I will give them all to you.
At what price? And yes, the anger is coming over his face now.
In exchange for... His eyes kind of go up off to the side in thought. A moderate boon from each of you, witnessed by Master Guy Bassett.
You must be joking.
Come now. You couldn't honestly believe I planned on walking out of here with a big knapsack of gold coins under one arm and a silver bust in the other. It's as I said all along. You are the Gauntlet. You have status. You can do things none other are permitted to. How could I pass that up when I found out you were in town?
You arrogant bastard. You're playing with fire.
Do you want the documents or not?
We will discuss this with my cohort. If she agrees to it, then we'll see.
He smiles very confidently, and then gestures
Or
back.
I could have you executed as a traitor.
The smile dampens a bit. Make a manipulation intimidation roll. Difficulty 7. You can add your status dots here.
Difficulty 7, you said?
Yes. The smile continues to recede from his face until it looks much more serious.
Or perhaps I could tell John Mark.
Now what good would that do for anyone? Think carefully, Lord de Courcy. The document's gone forever.
You're probably right. And he smiles disarmingly.
His eyes are wide with fear now. Let us see what Lady Vashkingen thinks. Hmm?
Yes, let's. She's even less forgiving than I am.
And he'll make careful steps around you, heading back into the library. And Elenid, soon enough you're rejoined by both of them. A much more concerned-looking Alfonso.
And an angry-looking but smiling Cormac. You've seen him angry enough to know.
She raises an eyebrow at this. Making friends, are you?
Only the best of friends. Why don't you tell her, Alfonso?
There are some documents which my sire left behind of sensitivity which I believe you would be interested in. However, I thought perhaps an exchange would be fair. He looks between the both of you. A boon for these documents. Given that I did know precisely where they were.
Yet not giving them would be impeding our investigation.
Cormac shrugs, continuing to smile, watching Alfonso carefully.
Yes, the more simple answer would be to hand him into the guards and keep watch until John Mark appears and explain things. Though, and a more sinister smile crosses her face, we could always leave him in the care of Kincaid until John Mark appears.
You wouldn't
What
do
is-
that.
A splendid idea. Why didn't I think of it?
Now let's just talk about this. Did I say moderate? I meant minor. A minor boon is all I require.
No. That's much more affordable, isn't it, Elenid?
I'm a businessman. This is a trade. There is some exchange which is equitable to all here. I'm sure of it. No need to involve Kincaid.
Oh, but why not? It is happening in his city, is it not?
And if we gave you to him, you could play with his pets all through the night. They hunger for company of men such as you.
That's such a shame. You've already missed well, at least one of the party.
He's looking between the both of you like a scared animal now.
How many exits are there from the room?
2, the one you both came from, and then the one leading back to the foyer.
Which one is Elendid closer to?
The foyer.
Using celerity, he's going to dash over to the other one. Just to prove his point that they're not going to let him escape that way.
Now, let us not be so hasty. Neither John Mark nor Kincaid need be involved. I will take my cogs and you may have the documents. Yes?
I, too, am a businessman of sorts, Alfonso. I'm not trying to rob you. I, for one, will give you the minor boon you ask for something so great as this.
Truly? Well, let us return, then. I shall show you the documents presently. And he smiles, looking between the both of you again. Come, no more tricks.
I certainly hope not, for your sake.
And he'll move at a hurried pace, trying to move past you, Cormac.
Cormac will step aside, crossing his arms, still smiling.
And this time he will lead the both of you to the personal office. He reaches into one of these bookshelves and moves a few things around, and he pulls out a parcel, kind of a package that you can see has been bundled together with twine.
Where no one could find them, really, Alfonso.
He looks a bit sheepish as he hands them over. That's it. That is everything. Except for the cogs.
We care nothing for the cogs.
Good. He smiles again.
It's lucky Thomas wasn't here. He probably would have wanted those as well.
Well, I'm sure you have some reading to do. I must be off then. I have everything I think I need.
When you wish to have your boon fulfilled, send word to York.
I will do that. He smiles as if unsure, his eyes mostly on you, although occasionally darting back to Elendid as he backs out of the room, as though perhaps surprised he is even alive.
You are far kinder than I would have been if it was entirely up to me.
I wouldn't have minded you stepping in. I'm still a little upset by the display at Hezekiah's crypt. Enough blood has been spilled on our behalf here.
True.
And a minor boon, well, that's sure not to cost me too dearly.
I'm surprised he didn't use it to try to keep you quiet about what all happened.
He's smart. He knows he doesn't have to. We're not even supposed to be here ourselves.
And yet we are, yet they know we are.
Yes, but unfortunately...
Did you at least personally look over what he took with you to make sure he's not sneaking anything out he's trying to say he doesn't have?
No. But that would be very foolish on his part. In any case, when we arrived, the safe was unfortunately empty. We have no knowledge of these documents. Although for good measure, Cormac will take them out of the parcel to make sure he hasn't been gobsmacked again.
You open it up and see that it does appear to be a collection of more letters at first glance.
I don't like that at first glance thing. He'll take them out and hand them to Elenid.
Elenid will give them a look over.
Alright, I'm not going to make you roll again, since you're very successful tonight. Clearly on the ball with investigating. Reading these over, you see the letters contained here are very clearly the ones which were missing. The references you were missing before now seem to make more sense, and now you see perhaps why they were missing. In these letters, in no uncertain terms, it is made evident that Gaetan de Corvo and Prince Jean-Marc were at the head of an organization called the Merchants of the Staple. There are other seemingly important documents here, but for these, I would require an intelligence law or intelligence finance to make sense of what they mean.
Can Cormac get in on this as well?
Absolutely, unless Elenid's hiding it for some reason. I'm gonna assume that's
I-
not the case.
I've got the law.
I got the law too.
Fantastic. One of us will get this. What's the difficulty?
The difficulty will be standard.
Hopefully it's you, because I just failed it. I know he means commerce, yeah.
Oh, did I say finance? Yeah, commerce. We can also do that. But Elenid got 3 successes on intelligence law, and so you are the one to deduce what these documents actually mean. Amid them, you see there is a will and testament for Gaetan's estate to go to his right-hand man, Cornelius, as well as an affidavit and documentation necessary to give Cornelius the majority control over the Merchants of the Staple. And it seems like there's a personal note attached from Gaetan instructing Cornelius to go directly to Wilthrith and the rest of the Gauntlet for security and protection, should anything ever happen to him. And you would recognize the Merchants of the Staple name. Until the turn of the century, they had a monopoly on the export of raw wool from England, which was the powerhouse, the basis of English economy. But this company has continued to maintain a robust mercantile presence in the export of processed cloth products, even in spite of the Mercers' fast spread. This group almost rivals the Mercers in ports and trade. And you recognize that in the absence of Cornelius acting on this documentation, legally, sole ownership of this company and its immense resources would otherwise fall to Jean-Marc de Martinique alone.
Hold for a minute. What he took, that doesn't give him control of this in any way, shape, or form, does it?
Who are you asking?
The only other person in the room with her.
I'm not sure on the finer points of commerce law. In any case, would it really matter? We're here to investigate why the Gauntlet was killed, not try to wrest control of this Mercer company away from Jean-Marc, who was clearly coercing Cornelius to get it.
I was more speaking on terms of our little informant. What he ran off with.
I know what you meant.
Fair enough.
Do you really think a weasel like that can run a company of such girth?
No, in fact, I entirely expect him to drive it into the ground.
Or sell it to the worshipful company. Whatever comes first.
Naturally.
Having run afoul of them myself some years ago, I can say they have the means to do just that.
Unfortunate. But we have what we came for. We should... Unless we are going to search the library any further, we should get out before any word comes back on what they should do with two members who were of the Gauntlet who are technically probably not on the friendliest terms as of current.
Even if they sent their fastest rider, it would take days for them to get message back. We have time to search if you'd like to. But we have to hide those letters.
I would like to. I would like to make sure we're not missing any.
The other letters we can keep out in the open. The only proof of what we found here. Questionable, but not damning.
And once our search is over, we should make haste and leave as quickly as possible.
Yes. And knowing what we do about York, it won't be safe for Thomas. And it certainly won't be safe for Robert.
Certainly. Let's just hope they haven't gotten into any significant trouble by the time we get...
You're underestimating them. I'm almost certain they have.
Yes, but the question is, how far it reaches. And with that, Alaned will go back to attempting to search the rest of the library to see if there's anything they seem to be missing.
And Cormac will help, and as his celerity is still active with that blood point he spent, he'll be doing it a little quicker.
All right. Between the two of you, Elened having quite a knack for this investigation and the sheer speed that Cormac can operate, you manage to go through every parcel that you can find, every letter, in about the next hour, and you feel like you've covered all the ground you're going to cover here without turning up any more news. And you do know the dawn is coming. It has been a long night.
Then they should return to Osiris Manor and rest for the day.
All right. Two of you return to Velonis Tamore's manor for the coming day. The day comes and goes without event, and you rise again. You take a blood point off. And you have a new night. And you have the information that you think you're going to get from this manor, from Gaetan's estate. And if Cormac is right, riders should be returning from Lincoln probably within the week. So you still have some time to stay here or leave for York.
They should ready a ship as soon as possible.
That is agreeable. Cormac is going to see about having his breeches modified with a secret pocket, however.
Elened can technically do that. She has sewing.
Oh, then he'll tell her what he wants. It's even better if nobody else knows about it.
She will. She will inform him that she's not the best at it, but she does know how to do it.
Indeed, it's a unique request. You've never done anything quite like this, although you do technically have the skills to attempt it. So,
Yes,
Go ahead.
most of her sewing attempts in the past have mainly been towards men.
So your goal is to change your trousers so that there is a hidden compartment? Is that what it was?
Yes, a hidden pocket with that he can line with those letters. His other idea was hiding them inside his body cavity, but he's not sure how that would play havoc with his internal organ, what's left of them.
Alright, Alanid, I will take a Dexterity Crafts roll, difficulty 8, to open up Cormac's trousers.
I'm spending willpower.
Okay.
And yes, he is walking around in his underclothes while you work on it.
That's 0. Unless sewing applies, but I only have a 2 in crafts.
I'm going to give you a success because it's not a true botch. You had a 10, so that's a fail. You spend a willpower, fail becomes a success. So it's a minimal success. That's how I interpret that.
Alright, after she's done, she will return them to Cormac and say, I told you I'm not the best at this, but at least this way no one will know.
You find they're not quite as comfortable as they were. It's definitely not the best job, but it works.
It should do the trick. Let me see the letters.
Alright, she'll pass them to him.
And he'll try to fold them in such a way that he can slip them flat inside the pocket.
You're narrowly able to do this.
Might save our lives in a pinch. Here's hoping I don't get wet.
Yes, is hoping to that. And with that done, she will go about seeing when the next ship is headed towards.
Alright, and just to clarify, you want to take a ship from Bristol south along the channel and then back up north to York, or north up through the Irish Sea and then back south?
I'm assuming south would be faster.
Yes, it would. Definitely. So that in mind, let me just look at my maps and come up with something approximate. You do end up finding passage on a relatively small 50-foot cog, which averages about 120 miles a day, and that's a very rough average because weather can change that pretty drastically. Fortunately, you don't have to go terribly far, and you're not going out into the open ocean very much. Staying relatively close to the coasts. Let's see here. This is going to be some very crude math.
And are we taking Gertrude with us?
That was the intent, yes. After she
Okay.
returned, she was going to inform Gertrude of when they were leaving.
That's fine. She is pleased to be at your side again. Just getting a scale here. Alright, I'm going to say it's going to take about 6 days and nights of sailing. Sailing out of Bristol, heading west, around Cornwall, and then through the Channel, past Calais and Canterbury, heading up north along the coast, and then finally arriving in Hull, making your way to York. So you have some time to discuss if there is anything you want to open up scenes or go into any more detail about what you do during that time, or we can move on ahead to the traveling and you arriving in York.
Cormac has nothing special he wants to do other than think.
And Ellen, did anything?
And pour over those texts that we were given by our Cappadocian acquaintance to see if there's anything new that can be gleaned from.
Sure, let me give that a look again. So, as a review, you already recognized or identified the Ammonites, which seem to have a lot of focus in this journal of many subjects, you deduced roughly that this text was as much a kind of amalgamation of interesting subjects to study as it was a kind of search of some kind. You think you're going to need more time researching at a proper library like Oxford or perhaps Cambridge to identify what might contain, or perhaps where you might find a true and original description of an ammonite where one was. So unfortunately the resources to finish your research aren't available on the boat, though you suspect if you spend time enough at a library, a proper university, you might be able to solve this. So with that in mind, we will close the scene on the site of Cormac and Elenid boarding their ship at the late evening on this night. And that would be approximately August 22nd. So 5 days later, it'd be August 27th. Alright, and we will transition scenes as you arrive in York. Let's see here. You might actually have some downtime before they catch up. Because as I recall, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Robert and Thomas came by... They came by carriage to York?
Yep.
Which took them quite a bit longer.
It was mid-September last I knew.
Yep, that's what I have as well. I don't want us to get too bogged down in the details of dates. You could probably easily get lost in time lapses.
Long story short, we're caught up and on the same day.
Yep. So we'll say it's around mid-September, early mid-September or thereabouts, when Elenid and Cormac are finally reaching York. So word quickly reaches the court in the castle that the Gauntlet is being received, the remaining members of the Gauntlet, as Cormac and Elenid make their way into York. It's easy enough with the knowledge that you have of the courts, of where to go. So you find your way to Elysium as Thomas and Robert did. And before long, you are ushered in to court by the ghoul Ethan Sharp, who brings you to be presented to Ragnar.
Is it possible to get something to eat beforehand, considering we lost 6 blood points?
Absolutely. You're hitting the city of Hull beforehand, so there'd be time enough to hunt there as well.
Oh, then we shall.
Yes, we shall.
I'm hungry.
So is Elned.
Alright, assuming no major changes in the way you hunt, given this is a fairly small, though growing town, you can use the same roles you have been to hunt.
Standard diff?
Yes. Alright, Cormac, you managed to find 2 people on your first night in Hull when you arrive.
Whoa.
And Elena, you
With
find...
special... Actually, yeah, with specialty.
And you find 7 people. You have a very successful hunting night. How much are you each taking, Cormac?
I'm taking 2 from each, so 4 total.
Okay. Elenid?
2 from 3 of them and 1 from the 4th one.
Easily enough done.
She will introduce Cormac to the 5th one she did not partake from.
So if you so desire, you could feed on them as well, Cormac.
She had a total of 7?
Yes.
Oh,
Ooh.
right. There's 7, so there's the last 3 she did not take
I'll just fill
from.
up. I only need 4 more.
The 2 of you clean house in Hull. And so by the time you arrive in York and are led by Ethan Sharp to be presented, you're quite calm, your beast is quite sated. And quickly, Thomas and Robert, I assume you would want to be present for the rejoining as they're presented here?
But of course.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I expected so. So the group of you end up arriving in the Great Hall at the Castle of York. Ethan Sharp is leading Elenid and Cormac in, and Thomas and Robert, you step into this Great Hall from the side and see that the 5 of you are all together, including Ethan. At the present, there's no Ragnar or anyone else, so you seem to have arrived a bit early. So the group of you rejoin after several weeks of being apart.
Cormac will grin and hold his arms out wide. Well, it's been quite some time, hasn't it, my friends? My goodness, Robert, you've gotten fat.
He was fat before. Get over here, you son of a pirate whore.
It's good to see.
Chuckles a bit to herself.
Nothing has changed with you.
Oh, much has changed, my friend, which we'll discuss later.
Good, then there will be news to share all around.
Ah, good. News and tales of our time in the place across the channel.
If you excuse me, sirs, lady. I shall go and inform Lady Ragnar of your presence.
Very well.
He smiles and bows and departs.
You will be pleased to find that York is a good deal more welcoming than we are used to.
Perhaps. Though I admit there's a bit of fun to people not wanting us around.
Quite the contrary. Ragnar seems to enjoy our company. Well, for the most part.
And that is
She
quite a
raises
change.
an eyebrow at the "for most part."
He'll cut a sidelong glance at Robert with a smile.
Now, what did happen?
Just a bit of court intrigue.
I'll let the
I'm gonna roll
lad tell you
perception
himself.
empathy.
You want to roll perception empathy?
Yes.
Absolutely. Standard difficulty. And you'll get a good amount of information from Robert unless he's trying to hide it.
Not in this case.
Alright. One success. Robert, what is the overall demeanor that you're carrying at this moment?
Arrogant and self-satisfied.
There you have it. And as you're gauging Robert there in the silence, you hear footsteps, a number of footsteps, as a small parade is entering the hall where you saw that Tom and Robert came from. Footsteps on the marble tile as a number of people come into view.
Robert will find, or Thomas will find his feet and bow in the direction of Lady Ragnar.
Elened will, as well, curtsy as is appropriate.
In total, you see the ghoul leads in a young man and a young woman, Jesper and Dorothy, and behind them Prince Ragnar, whom you recognize, followed by this red-cloaked woman who seems to follow quietly behind. She looks at the group of you as she walks past up to the dais and stands beside the throne there. The Gauntlet is rejoined.
Quite so, Your Grace. May I present Lord Cormac de Courcy and the Lady Elenid Verschink.
It is good to see you all again at one place. From where do you travel?
From Bristol, mistress.
And how is Kincaid?
He seems to be well.
She looks to you, Cormac.
He wasn't much help with the investigation, but he was hospitable.
I have never heard one claim otherwise. Was he holding one of his parties while you were there?
Yes, replete with his delicious apples.
Very curious. What did you think of that party?
Cormac grins and looks over to Elenid.
Oh, we did not attend.
How unfortunate. I had hoped to hear about them. I have not yet heard from anyone who has spoken of that party, of any of them.
Yes, as matters were, we had other business to attend to, unfortunately.
The next time you find yourself there, you should go, so you may tell me all about it. It's supposed to be somewhat exclusive. I wish to compare his to my galas. She offers a faint smile.
That should be best left in the hands of those more accustomed to court-like things. I always tended to avoid such gathering.
And besides which, we weren't invited.
Pity. I thank you for your presentation. I shan't take up much more of your time, and in fact am quite occupied this evening. There are chambers available here in the castle, should you require them.
Then it is we who are troubling your time, your grace, and we will take up no more of it.
Should you need anything, please let Ethan here know.
Of course, you've been quite gracious already.
She steps down and begins making her way out of the Great Hall, followed by the young woman in the red cloak. Her eyes linger on you as she passes by Thomas.
Good evening, Lydia.
Lydia smiles. She also looks at you. Ethan follows after, as if remembering something, and you are left with the young man and young woman, which preceded them all. Jesper and Dorothy. The young man, Jesper, whom is dressed somewhat strangely for the customs of Anglo-Saxons and Normans. He does have something of a kind of a leather tunic on, and you see a blade strapped to his back. His hair is somewhat wild looking. He takes a couple of steps forward, but he smiles. It is an honor to meet the entire Gauntlet. I am most honored here. Thank you.
Lord Jesper of Jormsburg is Lady Ragna's seneschal and child. Lord Jesper, Cormac de Courcy, and Elenid Berchingen. And of course, I would be remiss not to mention Lady Dorothy Napoleon, her other child.
Dorothy smiles, taking a few steps and then doing a well-practiced curtsy. How exciting to see all of you together. Does this mean there's something happening? And her hands clasped together.
Something always happens when we've gathered.
Sadly, no intrigue this evening, but we would like to catch up.
She looks between you and Robert with a smile of her own. Bristol, you say. Stories I hope you've brought, she says, looking over to Cormac and Elenid.
Yes, do tell me that you found everything you were looking for while you were there. And he'll wink at Cormac. And that you brought the axe.
I must apologize, lady, but it wasn't a very eventful trip. Bristol is dreadfully quiet this time of year.
She frowned somewhat.
We did, however, make some new acquaintances. And he'll wink back at Thomas.
I look forward to hearing all about it.
The man, Jesper, seems to look you up and down, Cormac. You have the look of a fighter.
I know my way around the battlefield. Though I do not like to fight.
Perhaps we shall fight while you are here. Sparring,
Oh.
friendly, of course.
If you are partaking in battle, I would like to watch.
He looks at you with some surprise. Apologies, my lady. I did not take you for a warrior.
She smiles a bit and says, I assisted some of the previous Gauntlet with their tactical endeavors.
Elenid understates her participation in the 100 Years' War. She's quite the tactician.
Truly, that is a feat. Which battles did you take part of?
Since only the 100 Years' War was mentioned, she will list the more successful battles of note and not bore him with the exact number of battles she's been in, because they would be there for quite some time if she did that.
The most famous is almost certainly going to be the Battle of Agincourt. And it was your strategy, as I recall, which led to the use of the longbowmen and staking up the field so that the French soldiers ended up getting stuck in the mud and were rained down on by English longbows, which was a tremendous and now infamous victory. Famous or infamous, depending on which side of the channel you're on. And I'm not sure everyone else knew about that.
No one else asked.
You were at the Battle of Agincourt?
She nods.
That was your plan?
She nods once more.
I had heard King Henry took credit for that.
Naturally, credit does have to go elsewhere, as is the nature of our society.
How would it reflect on the English army if it was known that both the female and a Canaanite won the day? It's an unfortunate state of affairs, needless to say.
Did the good King Henry at least fight alongside his soldiers, as it is said?
I don't immediately, out of character, I don't immediately recall him being.
Oh, he
But
definitely was not. He
as
was
a-
not at all in that battle.
I am loath to go against what our current state of affairs has people believing, but indeed he was not there.
Ah. My sires told me of the influence that some of the princes have in rewriting the chronicles, changing the heralds' minds about when and how the battles went. But I did not know it went so far, that even Agincourt could be so different. Still,
If you
impressive.
do not believe that I partook in that battle, I can give an example of an older campaign I was in. There are similarities in my tactical plans, after all.
He kind of waves his hand. I mean no disrespect. I am simply surprised at how different it seems that history will be written versus how it went.
It is simply the nature of our society. Things must be written a certain way in order to keep things moving.
I am pleased to have heard the story then. The real one.
Though I wish I could say I was a better fighter, unfortunately I am not. I am more inclined to the mental pursuits.
There are many men who can swing a sword, not so many men who can come up with plans like that. I shall trouble you no more about the tales of the past. Come, Dorothy, just leave them. I shall spare you my sister's prattling, as I failed to do so for Thomas and Robert.
No trouble at all.
And he smiles as he escorts Dorothy away, who looks over his shoulder longingly at the group of you, a smile.
Let us retire to Robert's chamber. I'm sure I at least have things to share that I'd rather not speak of quite openly just yet.
Yes, let's.
Right this way, then.
Alright, the group of you make your way out of the Great Hall, passing by more guards with torches, and Robert leads you up towards his chamber. We'll change scenes as you make your way over. Soon enough, the group of you are all together, and the door shuts on this very fine chamber, which seems to have been appointed for Robert. You see that no expense has been spared in the comfort and luxury even of the undead here at Castle York.
She glances around. This seems a bit much, does it not?
As it's been said, Ragna is very gracious.
Allow me to introduce you to the concept of being wooed.
It is indeed luxurious, but it seems rather wasteful.
There's no such thing as a wasted expense when one is trying to get on the good side of a certain individual, or a group of individuals in this case.
Fair enough. And with that, Alan Ed will check and make sure they're not being listened in on.
Perception alertness. Difficulty 6.
I do not believe detail-oriented works here.
I'm gonna say no. Alright, 4 successes. You look out the window and listen at the door, maybe even peek out it, and there's no sign of anyone else. The window does have this wooden latch which you can close if you want. Right now there's no one outside of it.
She will do so.
Alright.
From what I can see, no one is listening in.
I've been careful not to give Ragna any reason to suspect anything other than what she sees. It doesn't mean she's not paranoid. I've just not heightened that paranoia.
Very well.
Would you like to go first, or shall I?
You can go first.
Prince Ragna has designs on reclaiming Adam's previous position.
Does she now?
And she would rather hope that she has the backing of the Gauntlet to achieve that end. I've allowed her to believe that we will support her in this. Simply not dissuaded her assumption. I was wrong to believe her to be an appropriate ally. A certain source that the two of you might recall led me to believe that perhaps throwing in our lot with the Lady Ragna might not be in our best interests, never mind England as a whole.
I should agree with this. I heard a bit of a rumor, or rather we heard a bit of a rumor. And she'll getting close with them, almost conspiratorially. There was a little incident that allowed us to gain the information that Wulfric believed Ragna to be in control of the Mercers, or at least related to them in some way, shape. But it is simply a little saying, no evidence to support.
I have suspicions along those same lines myself.
Wolfric, you say?
Yes.
Curious.
The previous owner of the axe that we procured.
My, Wolfric does have a somewhat hostile view on Ragna, it seems.
He has his reasons.
Were you able to discover those?
Even in his life, he was not a fan of her, not in the times that I was around him. But he has certainly deemed her untrustworthy for past events.
She means to make for London at the end of the month.
Interesting.
Along with the Duke of York, who was here not a few nights ago for a banquet at which many noble houses had representation. Among them, each and every noble would be able to summon up between 100 and 1,000 men. Several hundred nobles.
Interesting. It seems like she's gathering an uprising.
Indeed, they are backed by the Neville family. The majority, at least, of the troops.
Is she seeking to corrode the covenant?
No. At least I don't think so. I think she's seeking to become chief among equals.
My force if necessary, it seems.
She spoke to me of captaining a ship. The analogy was not lost on me, and I hope it's not lost on any of you either.
No, it is not. Though, would you like to hear something a bit more interesting what the previous Gauntlet was looking into prior to their demise?
By all means.
They were looking into the Mercers. They believed if left unchecked, they could bring down the entirety of England.
And I believe whoever it is that's been manipulating events here in England is closely tied, if not indirect influence over the Mercer's company.
She nods.
I had a notion to imply interest in placing a trade port here in York. Just to see.
Oh, that would prove to be most interesting.
I thought the same. Merely toying with the notion is not the same as taking an action. But even so, I'd wonder at Ragna's reaction.
But they had a lead.
Oh,
There was a Patrick McNally, a velvet merchant who seemed to be kidnapped by. I'm uncertain as to where. I'm uncertain as to a lot of details about it, but they intended to follow this lead in order to, well, try to find the people behind the guild itself. Though if this man is still alive or not, considering how much time has passed, is, well...
highly unlikely.
Precisely. That trail, at the very least, could very well have gone cold.
But why make a velvet merchant disappear?
That is the question.
We should tell you how we came by this information.
Oh?
We found the one we were looking for. You know of whom we speak. I don't want to say it aloud. He provided us with a vision of the Gauntlet's last moments, as perhaps our Cassandra would have seen them.
And it is entirely understandable why she was so unstable after the fact.
We ourselves felt like we were burning, and indeed there was a prior there, whom Warfric attacked before he was consumed.
And the prior was cut down.
Do you know if Cornelius was there?
No.
I don't recall seeing him, but there's more on Cornelius to share.
Thomas thoughtfully folds his hands at the small of his back.
Well, I guess out with it then. And he'll reach down into his breeches, untying them, into the secret pocket and pull out the papers they found. Handing them over dutifully to Thomas so that he and Robert can look at.
While we were there, we happened to go to Gaetan's estate.
With the help of his weasel of a child.
Cormac was
What?
far kinder to him than I would have been.
Why would you have needed his help?
He knows the estate.
Yes, well... But would you not have been able to enter on your own?
Yes, but... John Mark's men happened to be guarding the estate.
Thomas looks a little bit dour. It was a risk.
And unfortunately, they did notify him of our presence. That message will have reached him well by now.
He already knows of our investigation, even if he may not be happy with us. And that investigation is what we were there to do.
Thomas is going to look over these papers, see if he can glean any new information, if they're not necessarily going to be forthcoming with what they've already found.
Cormac will tell him what they discovered, but I mean, not until he looks him over and figures some things out.
I'll have you make the same roll if you're gonna try and figure this out before Cormac explains it to you. Or if you
Well,
want to figure it out yourself.
He's definitely going to take Cormac's cues and obviously not worry about looking for details that are already being shared with him.
Alright then, yes, he'll share what they've already figured out. But maybe Thomas can see more.
Let me look over it. What's, I think, it's not so much a new detail, but what's most poignant to you, Thomas, looking this over and with consideration of your interaction with Cornelius and Jean-Marc, is it's very clear to you how iron-handed Jean-Marc is being with seizing control, or looking like he's seizing control from Cornelius, if he's keeping this locked away. That's what occurs to you when you look this over. You see that this should go to Cornelius, should have gone to him months ago. But from what you're hearing, this manor's been occupied since about the time, shortly after the Gauntlet was destroyed. This manor was occupied and everything inside was locked down. And so Cornelius likely doesn't know at all that all of this has been left to him while he has been at Jean-Marc's side.
Are there any signatures other than Gaetan?
It's a combination of letters and documents. You see some signatures by Gaetan, but also there's some signatures here by Jean-Marc. You can see that they did have a lot of control, the two of them, over the Merchants of the Staple, a guild that you're very familiar with, which is a titan of its own right in the mercantile business, especially of textiles.
Can I tell anything about the movement of their goods and what have you, and use that based on what I know about the movements of the Mercers to see if they aren't trying to outmaneuver?
Based on this, that'd be a stretch. There's not quite enough here to figure out if that was a marketing or financial strategy being employed, but they do reference their competition with the Mercers.
We may have to have another meeting with Jean-Marc. I'd be most curious. At the very least, this creates rather a damning modus operandi. Motivation to maybe turn a blind eye to someone else's machinations against the Gauntlet. If not, reason to carry out the arson himself. Thomas reclines against a wall and puts a hand over his mouth thoughtfully, his thumbs just idly stroking his mustache.
What is Robert doing during this time?
He's listening in on the conversation, and he's waiting patiently for a chance to read the letters himself.
Tom stepped away.
Okay, so he'll start poring over the letters.
And while he does this, Tom begins to muse aloud. If you were a powerful Covenant prince at the head of a titan of textile trade, in competition with another Covenant prince at the head of a different titan of textile trade, documents such as these would be quite damning to one's rival.
Indeed so. However, it explains his paranoia, at least in part. Should he not have had a hand in it, then there goes his business partner up in place, which could have led to things. Well, could have led to his attitude that we saw firsthand.
No. Jean-Marc
But that is
Jean-Marc is paranoid, true, but I don't think he was complicit at all. But I think whoever did set the arson wanted it to look as though he were, and made sure he knew that was precisely their plan, in order to ensure his silence. And perhaps even ensure his cooperation.
Perhaps. And her gaze will go over to Rob.
Anything could be possible at this point.
And Robert, as you're looking over these letters, you recall a few things starting to make more sense. In your time over the decades spent with your grandsire, you do remember so many meetings where Gaetan would come and meet with your grandsire in closed-door meetings. You knew they had some kind of endeavor of some kind, some enterprise together, but your grandsire was very protective of it. The money being discussed here, it doesn't seem to be congruent with what you've seen. You always knew Jean-Marc had gold and silver. He never wanted for anything. But it wasn't outlandish, not like what is being described here.
Jean-Marc has never displayed wealth equivalent to these numbers here.
I think you all were meant to find these.
No, I don't think that's true, if you knew how hard it was to get them.
But the best rewards are hard won. You'd never have bought it if it was simply handed to you.
It's a little threatening. And such is par for the course for things like these.
Has Robert ever seen Gaetan's personal handwriting?
Yes, you have.
Can you check and see if this is a forgery of some sort?
Absolutely. Make a perception investigation roll. Difficulty 6. Your successes will determine how much you learn. Two successes. Let me think. Robert, everything here looks legitimate. The writings from your grandsire look like the ones you've seen in the past, and the ones from Gaetan look legitimate. But one thing stands out to you. There's one thing that doesn't quite look the same, or what you recall. You're looking over some of these notes, and there's this very short note attached to some of these legal documents, kind of a postscript, and it details this instruction by Gaetan, instructing Cornelius to go directly to Wilthrith and the rest of the Gauntlet for security and protection should anything happen to him. And you see that there are letters there written slightly different. This isn't the way you've seen Gaetan write in the past. It's very subtle, but you pick it out. It's close, but it's not quite the same.
Unless a section here, similar to postscript. It doesn't match Gaetan's writing, but as far as I can tell, everything else seems legitimate.
So a postscript note to make it look as though Gaetan didn't trust Jean-Marc.
Yes, that's what it seems.
A third party planting it there, perhaps. As Cormac called him, the weasel of a childhood did make haste to find the documents first. Could it not have been planted by him?
Or someone else.
True, the guards were all around the grounds of that estate.
The hand that placed the note is less important than the hand that moved that piece into place.
Precisely. But I believe we both know someone who would be interested in these findings.
Jean-Marc, I'm sure. He should be at least made aware that we're working to clear his name.
Precisely.
But of course.
No, Robert.
I need not be the one to present the information. I'm sure a letter will do if that's what you'd like.
I don't believe I'd trust this to a horse and messenger.
Then what?
Our poetry lover.
Yes, that could very well prove a decent method.
The alternative is one or all of us goes to Lincoln together. Though I'm not sure how warm our welcome will be.
We admittedly have more pressing matters.
Quite so. The alternative, of course, being taking this to a different prince of the Covenant.
She nods. That was a thought that came to my mind as well.
But which one?
It seems to me, though I'm reaching, Octavia would be most convenient and least likely to raise alarm should we detour from London to Canterbury.
How do we know that she can be trusted?
We don't.
And I have heard nothing but horror stories of her.
I don't know how I feel about trusting Ambrose either.
He at least seems honest, vexed.
A fair point. And there's more than sufficient evidence to suggest that Ragnar intends to supplant him.
What if we tell him that? It could mean our own undoing.
Quite so. Perhaps we start by presenting him evidence to clear Jean-Marc's name. We work the rest of it out later.
I'm glad that we're discussing this at length, and I'm sure we can all agree that Ragnar, Kincaid, Barbaros, and de Martinique, he'll look over at Robert, cannot be trusted.
Barbaros is under someone's thumb. I believe if he didn't have that damned magister on his arm at all times, he might be more open.
And as we have no way to remove him, not yet.
Thomas grins a bit. I may have set a few cogs in motion.
You seem to have added Kincaid to that list.
You met him. Do you think we can trust him?
With matters such as this, I believe so.
My impression of him was less positive than yours. He seems interested only in hedonism.
Hedonism's far better than treason.
Very well, we'll take him off the list and put him on the list of the unsure, along with everyone else.
I only worry that Ambrose doesn't have the same overreaction to this news that he did about Amelia. It's not my intention to see Jean-Marc flayed or painfully interrogated.
Well, then who do we talk to? This cog you put in the works. For the Magister, how long will that take to bear fruit?
There's no telling. The regent of Lionsgate Chantry seemed most curious about an unfamiliar name claiming membership in House Tremere. I expect she'll do due diligence, gather what evidence she must, and rip him out root and stem in her own time.
Then Barbros will have to wait. What are the for and against about Ambrose?
He's grown paranoid and insular, and I wonder if it's not because whoever the architect of this design happens to have some dirt on him as well. Speculation at best, but still.
Very well, and what about Octavia?
I know virtually nothing of her,
Nor I.
and the same goes for
She's
Sebastian.
not someone to be trusted.
If we can trust none of the Gauntlet princes to take action on a traitor in their own midst, there is only one alternative.
There's still the option of Kincaid.
I'm not sure I'm quite ready to trust him with something of this magnitude. But there is, as I said, one alternative.
Out with it, man.
The rebels. Dufour. Ellen Alice. Jack Timbers.
And what do you think they'll be able to do? They're small in numbers. Some of the Covenant princes have armies.
I didn't say it was the best alternative. But when all doors are closed, windows are ideal.
Then perhaps we should put it to a vote.
Quite so. Those in favor of presenting this evidence to Ambrose.
Aye.
Aye, it is his city at stake, is it not? As well as the whole of the country.
Not so. Ambrose controls London. True. but the Covenant has divided the country.
I am well aware. Hence the adage.
Those in favor of bringing this to Kincaid.
I am likely the solitary eye in this questioning.
Quite. I've not met Kincaid personally. Well, I as in you are the sole I.
You'd love his children. They're cut from the same cloth as you, Robert.
Then would you have us present this to the rebels, Rob?
What you offer them as an option is puzzling to me.
I don't know what they can do with this information, but this, coupled with the notion that they might very well have a patron they are unaware of, yanking at their yoke. Might lend weight to their argument and force the Covenant to sit down and parley.
Not just, well, if you'd wish to remain anonymous. Otherwise, such evidence could be presented at council.
No. First it must be presented to a single prince in order to call that council. We alone won't have the influence. Many would buck at the notion, possibly refuse to attend, and then we're right back where we started, forcing outright conflict between the Covenant princes, and potentially even playing directly into the hands of this architect. I, for one, am abstaining from voting. I see no benefit to any of these three options that outweighs the benefit provided by the others, or the risk provided by the others.
Perhaps this is an opportunity to get to know the other Covenant princes.
You say that as though we have all the time in the world. Plans have been set in motion. Our best bet is to get out ahead of them.
Is it Ragna's rush that you are concerned about?
Quite. I have no idea what her plans are in London, but I'd rather not be absent when she sets them in motion. Which is the only reason why Ambrose presents an ideal opportunity.
Yes,
Assuming we can
he
get to him
is at our destination.
Let us assume that Ragna means to present similar evidence to Prince Ambrose upon her arrival. What do you imagine might happen if she gets to tell her version of the story?
We're at least partially already in question. As such, we will likely not be believed as much as we otherwise would be.
But we have the evidence, where anyone else might merely have a story.
Unless she
If-
has evidence that she had someone put together herself.
If Ragna presents evidence that Jean-Marc had a hand in the demise of the Gauntlet, or if we were to present that in her stead, this feud between the Percys and Nevilles would be simply the beginning of her takeover of Lincoln. expanding her hold even further. As I
And what
said,
of her rival? You believe he is firmly under someone's thumb?
I believe someone is manipulating him to make him an ineffectual rival at best. He's paranoid. He's unpredictable. Off-center. Very much like a mad bear biting at bees.
And his magister?
Keeps swatting the hive.
Nah. Still, it would make sense that neither would stand idle by while Ragnar assembles a large force.
But both are. And she is.
Perhaps they just need to know about this army.
Loath to admit it, but perhaps the benefit outweighs the risk with presenting to Ambrose this information, and hope that he has sufficient control of his senses to hear the argument against laying blame at Jean-Marc's feet. There we have it. A second voice in favor of Ambrose, I suppose.
Then that has the majority vote. From the votes given, at the very least.
Then the eyes have it.
Thomas will go and fold up the documents, hand them back over to Cormac. Keep these under wraps until we depart.
He nods and takes them, sliding them back into the hidden pocket. When do we depart for London?
I offered to book passage on the same vessel for Ragna. I will see if she's given to take us up on that offer. Otherwise, we can leave whenever we would like to.
You intend to take Ragna to the site of her future conquest?
I intend to minimize suspicion and retain her good graces until the moment that I intend to dismiss them entirely. We keep our enemies close.
Very well, then. I'll trust you to see what you can do.
I would suggest we set our departure not more than a week from now. Not less either. Might raise suspicion if we were to depart too hastily.
Agreed. And we must be very careful to maintain our composure, knowing the things we do now.
Quite so. With that in mind, though, there is one loose end I'd like to address. Something I feel Robert might want to share a bit about.
Oh.
What have you and Dorothy been speaking on in your long nights together? these past weeks.
Dreams, goals.
Hers or yours?
Perhaps a trade, but she is very talkative. But what makes you angle at this?
I like to know all the moving pieces on the board before I take my own move. Ragna's quite good at chess. I expect she's not ignorant to the machinations of her own child and has taken them into account. I would like to know what those machinations are as well.
She simply wants more status by any means necessary.
That's so. It's a sad state of affairs where I'll have to go and have a conversation with her instead of getting the full truth from you.
At least she knows you'd like to speak with her.
Good. He'll cock an eye at Cormac. She is quite the comely young lass, after all.
No longer interested in that sort of thing.
We've had that conversation. But she's had quite an eye for certain members of the Gauntlet, Long Tom included.
Perhaps you should get to know her a little better, Thomas.
Thomas grins a bit.
You two might have a lot in common.
Far more than I think she might be comfortable with, but that fact notwithstanding, I suppose I'll go and see if she's a bit more forthcoming than our young Master Devere. He'll amble towards the door.
Do have fun.
Not too much, though.
You let me know how it goes.
Oh, I'll give you all the sordid details when I return. If it's not tomorrow.
All right. Long Tom departs. The three of you mean to turn in for the rest of the day? Elenid?
How much longer do we have before summer?
Not much longer. Say it's a couple hours. While you're thinking of that, Cormac?
Yeah, Cormac's definitely going to turn in for now. The more he stays away from Ragnar and her court, the better.
Robert?
Robert returning for the night.
All right. Conveniently, you're already in your own chamber. Elenid, what do you think?
Elenid would like to find out who all is in charge of tactics for this supposed army and chat with them. It's hardly a thing she should brush off speaking to other tacticians. However, tonight might not be the best night for it. It is something she plans to do on the morrow.
At the very beginning of that, you said you're going to try and talk to the tactician in command of the armies.
The supposed army, yes. She has intentions of doing that, but she more has intentions on finding out whom that is tonight before turning in.
Okay. Alright.
On the basis of she is a tactician as well, it is rare for her to be able to talk of such matters with people.
That makes sense. So before we get to you finding that out, and Tom going after Dorothy, let us take our much-deserved break, since we're 20 after, and we'll come back in 15.
I've had to pee for like 30 minutes.
Same though.
Alright, be back.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Leftover turkey.
I made Black Friday quesadillas on Saturday.
Huh.
Basically, you take a little bit of each leftover and you put it inside a tortilla and then you fry each side with cheese.
Delicious.
It's amaze balls. Works best with the big tortillas because you can actually fit everything in there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I forgot to get tea before the game started, but I got that, and I had my servings of fruit for the day with my 3 boxes of raisins, so all is well.
And now the whiskey.
No, I don't drink when I'm running games.
I mean, that's like
What
an extra
whiskey
food group, though,
people
right?
are drinking?
I'm not. I drink when I play, not when I run. Did I hear you talking about frying all of your leftovers?
So Black Friday quesadillas became a kind of tradition in my house about 10 years ago. Basically, you take a little bit of each of your sides that came from Thanksgiving dinner, and then turkey, obviously, and cheese. And you put in a tortilla, and you fold that joker in half, and you butter each side, and you fry each side, kind of like a grilled cheese sandwich. And it melts all the cheese, and it warms up the leftovers. It gets all melty and gooey, and it's beautiful.
Are you frying up cranberries like some pagan heathen?
No, the cranberries are a topping.
Ugh.
I mean, it's cold cranberries on top of a hot quesadilla. It's beautiful.
People
Savory and sweet.
deep fry
fucking
ice
work.
cream.
Gross.
And here I am using the leftover biscuits and the mashed potatoes to make mashed potato sandwich
That sounds good.
with turkey as a side.
I mean, I would just put the turkey inside the biscuit at that point. That doesn't make any sense.
It's all going to the same destination.
So why not put it all together in the same place? Like,
Because
that's
the
just like-
turkey tastes good enough that I would rather not end up combining it in something and not tasting it on.
Yeah, that strategy is a fallacy.
Trust me. Cranberry sauce on top of a Black Friday quesadilla. Ugh. As you get the savory and the sweet and the cold and the tart. It just works. It just fucking works.
You can't tell me what to do, old man.
I mean, I can. You can choose to ignore me, but you're missing.
Speaking of quesadillas, is Cormac back?
What?
Not yet.
I've made a little game to look back at the general chat because I don't look at it when I'm running, usually. And then I try to figure out what you're referencing when you say things. We actually can get started without him, though I prefer to start with him.
What were we talking about?
You.
You.
Oh, I've been here. I'm sorry.
What?
You've been silent the entire time.
I'm sorry. I I was reading a comic. I did not know that we were like
Jesus.
waiting up.
Okay. Then we will return. So we return the same night as the Gauntlet finishes their discussion, hashing out what has been found out, deciding on what to do next. The group decides to turn in or head off. Long Tom departs in the direction of Dorothy's chamber as Elenid leaves to perhaps find out more about the tactician that might be involved, this army that is perhaps being constructed. As Robert and Cormac decide to turn in for what remains of the night. We will start with Elenid first. In your search of the castle, you come across Jesper as he is about to turn in for the coming day as well, and get to talking to him a little bit about military doctrine and strategy, which he is eager to speak to you about. He seems very pleased to be speaking with a veteran of the Battle of Agincourt. And when you bring up the topic of the tactics of the army being constructed, he seems to be unaware that there is an army being constructed. Although he does inform you that he has been retained by Ragna as a kind of warrior and advisor to matters of war. He admits that Ragna probably knows more about the field of battle than he does. Is there anything else Elenid wishes to pursue tonight, or further inquire through Jesper?
That was it. She was simply trying to figure out who the tactician was, and she got her.
Meanwhile, Long Tom, you exit Robert's chamber, going further down the castle halls, and you reach Dorothy's chamber and find that the door is just ajar. It is dark inside.
Being polite, he'd knock first. Maybe a little too firmly, possibly jostling the door just a little bit.
Despite your firm knocks, no answer comes from within. But the door does give it your push.
Lady Nicolier.
There is no answer.
He'll push the door just a little bit further open, but not step in just.
It's still quite dark in the room, though a little bit of the light from the moon illuminates some. You don't see her in here at first glance.
Are there any guards nearby? There have been guards literally nearby all.
There have been guards literally nearby everywhere, and at the end of the hall you see another one standing post, clearly within sight of this doorway.
You there. Have you seen anyone come or go by this door?
He looks to you and then looks very slowly to the area you're pointing at, and then looks very slowly back to you. No.
Have you seen Lady Nicolier this evening?
No.
Do you know who I am?
No.
Damn last.
He looks at you.
Do you know who you?
Go ahead.
Do you know who you are?
Mark.
Mark. What?
Mark.
Come along then, Mark.
No.
There's trouble afoot.
He stays at his post.
Tom's not stupid. He's not about to get framed for something unwholesome. He's going to grab the man by his hand, or by his arm, and drag him bodily along, in search of Jesper, or whoever else he can.
He'll shake you loose. No.
He's going to shake me loose.
He's going to try. Make a...
Dominate attempt?
Well, I was gonna say... something more along the lines of perception awareness.
Well, I can do that too.
Standard.
Can I use perception alertness?
It won't give you the same information as... and it won't be
fair
as
enough.
useful.
We'll just hope that my meager dice work out. I'll take it.
Did you roll?
Yeah.
I only see one from Robert DeVere. Oh, I've lost connection to... There it is. I'm back. Alright, 2 successes. Obviously, this man is under compulsion, thorough compulsion. And even if you're not a master of the trade yourself, you recognize its effects. And this man seems very strongly compelled to remain at his guard post. And because you're familiar, especially with your sire's mastery over it, you know that men like this often have been depleted of their personality, who they were. And it seems like this man is unlikely to do you violence unless you threaten him. He's really a shell of a man at this point. Critical thinking is going to be beyond him, based on what you're seeing.
Can I try and dominate him myself?
You can try.
What are my dips?
What are you trying to... which level are you using?
I'm going to be using level 2.
Alright, subjugation. Is based on willpower, is that correct?
That is correct.
4. 5 successes. You look at him with the strength of your gaze and the certainty of your words, and he does not move. He continues to look at you with dead eyes. That doesn't happen to you often.
That's really weird. I'm going to go back in search of Jesper then.
Alright. You part from the man who watches you with a sleepy gaze until you are out of sight. As this is happening, Robert, you are back in your room, and you go about closing the room down. Light gets silenced, the window, the hatch closed, and you're going to close the door when a small hand appears in the inside of the doorway to stop it from being closed, and you see that Dorothy has appeared. You see just under the shadow of a cloaked hood.
Ah, Dorothy. Come in.
She smiles, putting a finger up to her mouth as she moves into your fairly dark chamber at this point, closing the door behind her.
Robert smirks and nods as she enters.
She'll move to your window and open it up so there's some moonlight coming in, and you can see her a little bit better now. I couldn't help but notice Lord Chamberlain was heading in my direction, so I went around. I wish to speak with you before I speak with him. I hope that does not bother you.
Not at all. You have questions on your mind.
I worry about what he might say to you. I do not believe he fancies me much. He speaks openly of his caution around me even as he clings to my sire's bosom. I can only imagine what he says in private.
Nothing worse.
Do you think me manipulative? She says as she steps over and sits down at your bed.
Perhaps that employee you made earlier would speak to lengths about that, but overly? Not any more than anyone else.
She smirks and pats at the bedside beside her.
Robert walks over to take a seat by her side.
I'm not so false as your companion would think, as perhaps you might think. I have made my choice, Robert, and I have chosen you. Sworn it in blood. I have laid myself bare to you tonight, and in past nights. And she looks to you knowingly. You have seen who I associate with, and what our goals are. I would hope that my vulnerability was evidence of my loyalty.
Indeed. And that's why I do not say overly. Everyone has their own manipulative streak. But our bond is there,
Yes, it is. Neither of us need be alone, Robert. I may be your partner.
Indeed. Tom is seeking you out. He wishes to inquire about what we've been up to.
She bites at her lip for a moment. Do you trust him? Do you think he trusts you?
Do not think he trusts me. And trust him? He has good intentions.
It is quite a one-sided relationship, do you not think?
Yes, it is. But Thomas does not seem to be very much the personal type.
For as long as you agree to it, I shall be an ally to you. To watch your back. To give you support in every way you should need. And she smiles.
And of course, the same goes for you. We are in this together.
She smiles and holds at your chin. And of Lord Chamberlain, if he seeks me out, what would you have me do? What would you have me say?
But first, he is weighing options. He is seeking information. Mainly on Ragna. He sees the pieces being moved. He's deciding what play to make. As I'm sure you've seen what Ragna is up to.
She nods. He seeks information. What information shall I give him?
A fine question. Well, let him know you are indeed spending time with me, speaking of ways to acquire status.
She nods again.
However, he may even play at a desire to side against Ragna. And with sufficient reason, I believe he would not side with her, but it is best to use caution.
Then I shall use caution with it. She smiles faintly again.
And no doubt he will accuse you. Just be aware and don't let it get too personal.
Her smile grows. As you say. And she'll push off from the bed down to kiss you on her lips, and then make her way across the room toward the door, unless you should stop her.
Robert's smiling as she leaves. Gives her a knowingly nod if she ever turns her head back.
She does once as she's closing the door, disappearing into the darkness of the hall. And Thomas, meanwhile, is going through the castle halls, the corridors.
Well, he's had time to ponder. If he was a Rapunzel trapped in a tower with a sire who barely let him out of her sight, he'd probably dominate his guard too. So he's going to head back to his chamber and wait.
Alright. You return back to your chamber, and as you make it inside and close the door behind you, you see a figure sitting on your bed, cloaked. A black cloak. And as the figure looks up, you see Dorothy's face, and she lowers the hood.
He'll close and lock the door. I was wondering when you'd get around to me. Almost enough to make a fellow wonder at your priority.
She smiles faintly, looking to you, standing up from the bedside. Thomas, forgive me, Lord Chamberlain.
Long Tom.
Long time.
The only people who call me Lord Chamberlain are people looking to get something from me.
Well then, Long Tom, you'll have to forgive my truancy. But I'm here now, and I was hoping we could share a word.
Quite so. I have a few choice words, mostly questions. I'll do my best not to make them sound accusatory.
Her eyebrows raise a bit, as though interested or amused, and she paces to the side of the room.
He'll find a chair at a side table and gesture for her to join him.
She sits down beside you.
I'm curious, what are your intentions with Robert? He may be a great fool, but he's my great fool, and I'd rather not see him used in some private feud between child and sire.
Her eyebrows furrow briefly. You think him a great fool?
I know him a great fool.
And I think you underestimate your companions, Long Tom.
I've been accused of worse.
He is pure of heart. Do not mistake that for being foolish. You can have an idealism and still be wily about you.
It is fair to say that I may have become jaded in my time. But don't we all?
And what not of you? You seem to have been courting my sire of late. I have not seen her pay such attention to a guest.
My loyalty is to England, as it ever has been.
I never questioned your loyalty to England, but it is interesting you bring it up.
How so?
What are your intentions with Ragnar?
I had good authority suggest that York was a safe place for many to visit. I wish to see for myself how its prince welcomed her guests. Needless to say, I have felt quite welcome.
And secure, I
That's
imagine.
However, that does raise more questions than answers. How long has the guard at your door been dominated? The compulsion on his face was evident.
Oh, who can say? I've long since stopped paying attention to such things. It is as
So
I
you're
said,
saying
it's quite secure here, with Ragnar's many guards.
It's curious that the guard at your door had been compelled in such a way to simply remain in one place, knowing naught but his own name.
Tell me, Long Tom, have you questioned many of the guards here?
I didn't have cause to. I found your chamber door wide open, the room dark. I was concerned something ill had befallen you. Well, how might that look?
I think you'll find many of the guards Ragnar has in her employ are quite boring. And she lowers her head, looking at you knowingly.
Oh, how many have you dominated?
She smiles. Ragnar would never stand for such a thing.
That many, it's unlikely she keeps track of them all.
You would have to ask her about it, though I'd be careful about how you phrase that question.
Quite so. I must admit I have some empathy for you, Dorothy. My sire, too, held me far too close for far too long, and I also felt smothered and hamstrung by the effort.
Cloistered, yes, I may be, but not so smothered as some might believe me to be.
I worry only that your ambitions rise like Icarus.
I do not believe my ambitions are exuberant or extraordinary. I want what anyone wants. An elevation, status, perhaps some coin. And yes, freedom would be nice from time to time.
Have you not the resources to move from beneath her skirts?
I have some, though she has made things such a way that it is complicated for me to leave and be on my own. I shan't bore you with the details, but it is an existence I have come to grow accustomed to.
Has she made you take the blood oath?
That is something I would never stand for, and she is quite aware. She has other ways, less blunt, of seeing that her followers would do as she wishes.
So coy. All these answers and yet more questions spawning from them.
Well, the dawn is coming, I'm afraid. You shall have to ask what you may.
You were concerned about my closeness to Ragnar.
Interested.
Concerned. As it may fall afoul of your plans with Robert. I would have to be a great fool not to see the advantages of aligning with Ragnar. Since I am not a great fool, I also see the empty spaces where my ignorance of her motives and desires butts up against my duties to England and the Covenant.
And how have you deduced her desires, her goals you speak of?
I listen, Dorothy. I listen, and I create no wake as I move. What would you have Robert and the Gauntlet do at your behest?
At my behest, she points to herself.
Yes. Surely you believe that having a member of the Gauntlet at your side is beneficial to your aims. For you are also not a great fool.
I am no great fool, though I do not see myself as terribly clever. I do recognize the value in friendship with someone of your station. You are correct. However, I believe that having such resources as a contingency rather than an active coup is just as good. This feud between Barbaros and Ragnar, it has been growing for some time. Perhaps you've noticed things others have not. The escalation. It will come to a head. And when that happens, well, I would certainly wish to have allies in such strong places as yourself. As Robert. Do you understand now?
You worry that Barbaros might overthrow Ragnar, or that Ragnar might seek to expand.
I worry that there are and she stops, her mouth open for a moment before she pauses. I worry that our forces much greater and larger at work than myself, and that I will be squashed as they battle. So yes, in the interest of survival, I must find ways to evacuate, to survive, to escape, if should I need to.
If it is not merely financial reasons holding you in York, how would you hope to escape if this conflict comes to a head as you are?
I cannot predict the future, Long Tom. I can only say that calamity brings as much danger as opportunity. And while I am not overly clever, I do think myself somewhat resourceful. Perhaps enough that with the right allies at my side, I might survive a very dangerous situation for someone in my position.
It's curious, because I would have found you a place in London for the asking.
But then perhaps I might be under your thumb.
You might have seen it that way, but I promise that I would not have.
And I promise you Ragnar does not. She smiles.
What am I to do with you, Dorothy? You obviously have plans of your own. And I worry that your sire already knows of them and has taken measures to address them directly. But you are not being forthcoming. Therefore, I cannot adjust my plans accordingly.
Where is Tom sitting in relation to Dorothy?
He'd have his right arm on the table. I would imagine there'd be 2 chairs there. In my head, they're, how would I phrase this? At right angles to...
So maybe a couple feet between them?
With that.
So she reaches down and places a hand on your knee. I think perhaps you worry too much about me.
Careful, Dorothy. The last one who laid hands on me like that was a dockside whore in Sardinia looking to part me from my coin in exchange for a quick frolic at an inn with a leaky roof. I expect you are looking for far more than a hasty fuck, and asking far more than a few pieces of silver.
She retracts her hand slowly. I think perhaps we have spoken enough tonight.
I am not your adversary, Dorothy. I think perhaps we both want similar things, but have different ways of achieving those ends. I would not choose to stumble over your feet, nor have you stumble over mine.
She rises from her seat. I do not view my sire as my adversary, per se, nor do I wish for her downfall, as it were. I am simply looking to survive.
Then my previous offer stands.
To join you in London.
For the asking, I will find you a place. Make introduction to Ambrose. Even house you if you need it.
She smiles at you.
And if you wish to retain your relationship with Robert, I will not stand in your way. If all you really do seek is freedom, it's there on the table. And he'll turn his hand over and offer it up.
He's offering her his hand.
As an analogy for the freedom that he's also on.
As she's now standing, she lays a hand on your shoulder and begins to walk past you towards the door. I hope your quick fuck in Sardinia was more enjoyable than this.
I didn't pay for it then, and I don't plan on paying for it anytime soon. She moved on to someone who was willing to pay. I hope this isn't an analogy of that moment in my time. For whatever it's worth, Dorothy, I bear you no ill will.
At this point, she's reached the door and has it cracked, but looks to you. Nor are you. Good day, Long Tom. And she smiles again as she begins to close it behind her.
Until tomorrow evening, Lady Nicolier.
And Long Tom is left in his chamber with a little bit less than an hour before dawn. And we will end the scene there. As day comes, the following evening begins. Everyone can take a blood point off. Alright, so new evening. You each awaken and begin getting yourselves ready for the night, whatever that may be, perhaps bathing, perhaps just dressing, or rolling out of bed in what you had. We'll start with Cormac on this new evening. Is there anything in particular you want to do? Or are you waiting until the travel to London? Hello? Do we lose Cormac? Or am I disconnected again?
You're still here.
Shit. Can you hear?
Can you hear me
There
now?
he is.
That's weird. I don't know what happened. Yeah, there's nothing in particular that in York that I want to do, but he will see whether Robert has roused or not. See if they have plans.
Alright, so you're checking on Robert. Robert, you're rising for the evening. Is there anything left in York you want to do tonight or in the remainder of the month until you travel?
Yes, he still remembers the promise to go check out the Mercer outpost, trading post, with Long Tom. If that's still going to happen, that would be a thing. Other than that, he'll actually try to get closer to Ragna.
Okay, good to know on both accounts. Make a note. We'll probably address some of that in next session. And Elenid, tonight or in the next couple weeks, do you have any plans for York?
She has intentions of keeping up the tactical talk in order, and at least going to see any spars that are taking place to offer critique. Perhaps participate in one or two, but she is hardly the warrior.
Alright. So broadly finding out more about the tactical prowess of Ragnar's forces and perhaps witnessing and engaging in sparring.
Precisely.
And Long Tom, new evening for you and a couple weeks until you know Ragnar will depart for London. What are your plans?
Let's see. He does want to speak with Ragnar at least one more time before they all depart. He does want to pop by, like Robert suggested, pop down to the docks and look into the Mercer's Company offices here in York. He'd like to take a moment, if he can, time allows, to spar with Lydia, since he did ask. She did agree.
Okay. So, returning to Cormac, you're finding your way through the Castle of York, which is a little bit of a maze at first, until you get the hang of some of the halls and corridors. It's quite large. And as you're strolling through, you see Robert is exiting his room, and he doesn't see you coming, so you kind of catch him by surprise, and the two of you meet in the hall.
Robert.
Ah, Cormac. Surprised to see you so early in the evening. How fares things?
As well as they were last night when I left you. I was curious as to what you'll be up to until we leave for London. I myself have no plans in York.
Well, me and Long Tom did discuss heading down to the docks to see what we can discover from the Mercer Company.
Oh, I would dearly love to join you on that.
Well, I'm sure Long Tom has no qualms with having you come along, and neither do I. Do you have anything else planned?
Nothing.
Now, what about Jasper? Were you going to spar with him?
It was an idle chatter. I really have no intention of boosting that man's ego.
Or spending any time with Ragnar's? Well, so be it. You may have precious little to do then.
I'm quite alright with that.
A welcome break, is it?
And that it is.
Very well, very well. Do you know what Elenid is doing?
I have no earthly idea, but we could ask her.
I'll just make that our next stop then.
Alright, the two of you make your way down the hall, and Elenid, by this point, you've certainly risen and gotten yourself ready for the evening as to the extent that you wish. When you hear a knock at your door.
She will go to the door and open it, see who it is.
You see Cormac and Robert standing there.
Good evening to you.
Good evening, Elenid. We were discussing our plans for the night. We are planning on going down to the docks to check on the Mercer Company. I thought you might be interested if you had nothing else planned.
I had intentions on seeing exactly what extent the warriors here are up to. And seeing to what extent the tactician's knowledge seems to stretch.
Jesper indeed is knowledgeable on tactics, but after hearing what you've been up to, I have my suspicions you would even feeling stunted.
She smiles a bit, perhaps, but I'd rather not judge ahead of time. Besides, having someone to talk in length about tactics is a rare occurrence.
Indeed. I think you'll find your time with Jesper well spent.
Besides, if all of you do intend to go to that Mercer's company, it's best that someone remains behind just in case something happens, so other people could know where you are. Not that I expect anything bad to happen, of course. It's more a contingency plan.
Of course. I highly doubt we'll get into too much trouble. At least, hopefully no blood will be shed.
Of course, but do be careful. I personally have not interacted with them, but from what I've heard, they are not the sort people would want to interact with.
Well, they're always willing to make a deal. That's highly in their favor. We'll see if we can tweak that offer more in ours.
Very well. I will leave you two to likely finding Thomas, as I assume your next destination is.
Indeed it is. Well then, wish you a fair and productive evening.
And to you as well.
Robert gives a slight nod and prepares to leave.
Alright. And the group of you continue on down the hallway. And Tom, you're making your way towards the Great Hall when you see your companions grouped together. They seem to be looking for you.
Wasn't that a pleasant surprise? All of us of one mind.
Quite. I assume you're still planning to go down to the docks.
Well, of course. At the very least, I'd like to get a look at their operation.
Very good. Elenid will not be joining us, but that just leaves us 3 men.
Quite so. We'll see if we can't drum up some details. See if there's not room for a Chamberlain trade post to go in.
Are you actually seeking because we find someone in a high enough position? Perhaps he could be convinced to be more agreeable.
One of these days, I'm going to teach you about innuendo.
I'm just making sure.
Let's be off then. Perhaps our poetry level will make another.
I'm ready when you are.
Quite so.
Another.
So the 3 of you head on out, leaving Castle of York and Elenid behind. And we will follow the group of you as you make your way out of the castle back into the streets and off in the direction of the docks, as Robert is the one guiding you towards their office. And this is the direction he takes you. Soon enough, Robert leads you down a street that faces the boardwalk. And you see not a very large building, but very plain. There's no paint on it. And this is still fairly early in the evening, maybe 8 o'clock in the evening at this point. So there are still people out and about. And when you approach this building, you do see a guard, a man dressed in a gambeson bearing the sigil of the Worshipful Company of Mercers, a sword sheath at his side. And he watches the group as you come into view. This is maybe a 2-story wooden building. Again, very bare and very plain looking. There is, of course, the sign that does identify the Company of Mercers, but if you weren't looking for it or you didn't know where it was, it'd be easily missed.
Now what?
Now we inquire. Tom will approach.
Alright. You approach the door to this office building, and you see the guard takes a step in front of you, standing in front of the doorway.
Ho there.
Well,
Does your chief steward still remain?
what business do you have with the chief steward?
It's early in the evening, not that late. Was hoping to place an order for a house. I represent nobility which wishes to remain unnamed. They need to procure certain items. You understand the need for some confidentiality, I'm sure.
Make a manipulation subterfuge roll, standard. He looks you up and down, and then to Tom and Robert. Wait here. And he turns to enter the building. He returns about a minute or so later, opening again, and you see there is more light inside than perhaps it looked on the outside. You, and only you, may enter, but I'll need any weapons on you.
Tom will unbuckle his sword. Be careful with that. It's new. Castle Forge steel. It'll be your ass if it's damaged.
He smirks at that, taking it, and then it looks like he's moving to pat you down. Does Tom have any other weapons on him, any daggers or anything?
He does not.
Alright.
I mean, he has other weapons in that Tom is actually Judith, but that's a different kind of...
Right. But no, like, boot knives or anything?
Nope. How personal is this pat down?
Fairly personal.
If Tom were in fact actually Tom, would he know what religion?
Say that again?
Is he trying to feel Tom's dick?
No.
Not that personal. Got it.
What is Tom wearing, though? Upper
Heavy
body.
He's wearing his heavy overcoat, linen shirt, probably a jerkin under his coat.
Okay. That's gonna help.
Weighty, yeah, something weighty leather that's not going to make it terribly obvious that there's a lot of padding and bindings and things that men don't generally.
Okay. Yeah, that's enough to convince this man. So as he gets done patting you, you think he spends a little bit more time on your chest, but then he seems to be convinced. Come, he says, holding your sheath blade and walking in.
Tom, of course, follows.
Robert will just look at Cormac.
Cormac shrugs.
Looks like we got left out of this one.
We'll be here as support.
Quite right.
All right. So you remain waiting there at the outside of the front door?
maybe take a seat or something of that nature and just pass the time watching people as they pass.
Is there anyone inside the offices when I go?
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a scene once I make sure no one's trying to do anything else.
No, nothing.
Okay. Hey, Robert, you find a barrel to sit down at. Inside, the man leads you into a very narrow, again, very bare wooden hallway. There are candles and torches lighting it up. And you're led into a kind of front receiving room with a little desk. And you see another 3 guards inside. And a man at a desk who is dressed in fairly fine tunic and hose, a nice merchant's hat. And he seems to be working on some scroll. He sets the quill down and rises from his seat. You see that this building does go in further. There's another hallway that goes on further, but you seem to have been stopped at this initial receiving, almost reception room. And the man in the tunic looks at you and smiles pleasantly enough, despite the sober and grim look of the 2 guards behind him and a 3rd in the far corner. Seems you've caught me at a late hour, sir, but not late enough to entertain business of sensitive sort. Please take a seat.
I wonder if my companions might join me. My lord's master-at-arms and chief stabler have some input on this matter.
I'm afraid for precaution's sake, I'm going to decline that. What did you say your name was, sir?
I didn't. But since you ask, Long Tom.
Long Tom. I am Lawrence Rich, of the Worshipful Company of Mercers. I am sorry that we cannot allow such men, armed as they are, into here. But presents something of a security risk, you see.
It's a curious way to greet potential clients.
It is a curious hour to present as a client.
We've had quite a long ride, and quite a long ride to return. We don't mean to tarry long in York, no more than this evening. I was simply glad to be able to catch you while you're still here.
Indeed, in the final hour, it seems. Now, what is the business I may?
So while he's talking, Tom is going to be trying to get a look at the ledgers in front of the man and see what kind of paperwork he's working.
Sure. Perception, investigation, difficulty 8. It is small and upside down. Two successes. You get a glance at it, and you positively identify it as exports and imports of the most recent week.
Can I tell what kind of exports and imports?
You'd have to get a better look. You recognize the style of ledger. You've had some of your own, so you know what it looks like. But not enough successes to detail the minutiae.
How about general volume?
There's a good volume. You recognize that.
My liege seeks to procure certain... Well, I won't gild the lily overmuch. Our smithy has collapsed, unfortunately. But given this current climate, he wishes to procure certain arms and armor.
Make a manipulation subterfuge roll. Standard. He seems to look at you quizzically. So shipments of arms and armor. In large enough quantities that you, I imagine, must seek out a trading guild for them.
A trading guild of some repute with sufficient resources to move a considerable volume.
Very well, and who is this, Lord?
I'm not at liberty to discuss my liege's actual name. He does not wish these things to be discussed openly. Suffice to say, there's coin enough to pay.
He seems to pause at that. Well, if that is the case, then we can always bring in a more senior officer to detail the finer points of the exchange rate. But without any more information, I do not know if there's anything else I can provide you, Long Tom.
I was sent simply as a negotiator. We're shopping around.
Ah,
We understand that House Chamberlain is considering placing a new trade port here, and of course, there's also the matter of your other competition.
well, I'm afraid I cannot speak to the local rates here in York. Unfortunately, the staff here has only been here a number of months, so I'm going to apologize if I am not as well versed in the rates of our competition. But I shall look into it.
That is, in fact, part of my edict. Before we depart tomorrow morning, I am to seek out other quotes. Simply wish to know what we should expect to pay for gambesons, fine swords, bows, arrows, sufficient to outfit, I believe, 1,500 men.
He nods at you, unblinking. Let me review one of the... And he's kind of speaking as he's standing up and looking over his scrolls. There is a scroll that I believe would be most illuminating here. Excuse me. And he steps off, going down the farther hallway, leaving you and the 3 guards. Did you do anything while he's gone?
What all is around me besides these 3 guards and this
So you entered from a hallway into a fairly small and low-ceiling room. There is the desk, the chair you're sitting in, and then on the opposite side, his chair. There's the ledger and a few other scrolls across this table. There, on the other side, on his side of the table, on his left and right side, there were guards not very far away. And then off to your left, in the corner of this wall, there's a 3rd guard. And this is not counting the man who let you in and who is standing behind you. There are no windows into this room. There is a carpet. There are candles lighting the area. Otherwise, there is not a lot in this room. And there's writing implements or tools. A few minutes later, the man does return, though, and he's holding another ledger, and it has it already opened as he steps over to the table beside you. He sets it down and facing it so you can both see. He kind of runs his finger down and starts pointing out some of the prices that they have on the equipment you're listing. These are the going rates for the volumes you are speaking of. Of course, there will be a processing fee. Much of this can be more further negotiated between you and the officer, which I will summon here at the next meeting you come to.
Of course. Assuming that we choose to use your guild. Of course. I understand the Company of the Staple is beginning to dabble in weapons trade as well.
He looks at you and kind of wryly smiles confidently. They have no business entering into such trades.
Still, a savvy negotiator understands all of his options.
Well, as I said, we are quite new to this post. However, I can say from my experience with the Mercers that the prices are difficult to beat.
It's curious you say that. I had it on authority that the Company of Mercers had stationed men here for some time.
Ah, yes, they had. However, the current staff here has just replaced the previous staff a number of months ago.
The entire staff replaced. Must be woefully inefficient.
He shrugs. It is not my job to ask these questions. I am pleased for the office. Office in York is one of the best we have.
How is it not the business of the chief steward to understand the efficiency of his post?
You'd have to ask the former steward. He smiles again as he returns to his seat. It must have been lacking.
I trust you'll see to it that that's addressed.
You have my word. And he grins.
Can I throw wit commerce to see if the rate being quoted is higher or lower than would be otherwise appropriate?
I'll give you an intelligence commerce.
Hey.
And I'm going to give you a difficulty of... Difficulty 8. This is not something you trade in often and not something you've reviewed recently. 1 success. Unless you have a specialty there.
So don't.
Okay.
Even if I did, it wouldn't apply.
Yeah. So you're not so well versed in the prices of arming soldiers, but you generally know the prices of materials and you kind of extrapolate. These prices look fairly good based on what you were expecting.
How do you manage to keep your overhead this low?
Efficiency. He smiles again triumphantly.
I worry. Someone might suggest a highly efficient organization only to mask substandard product.
Our equipment is bought in large quantities by both the Royal Force and many successful mercenary bands. I've not heard any complaints from them.
Sad that you don't have them here to attest to that.
He looks around at the guards and smiles faintly again.
Though, considering the size of the Mercer's company, high volume, even at substandard prices, does tend to lower one's total cost. It's definitely worth entertaining. Though, I did promise to bring my liege quotes from multiple sources.
He nods.
Would you care to draft an official document so that I can present something to him?
I can draft you the most recent year's quotes on these prices so that he may examine them. I can assure you they will not have changed within a significant margin since then.
That will do fine.
He nods and then moves off again to bring back a scroll, which seems to be a prepared receipt. And it outlines that very thing. Well, I hope to see you again, Long Tom, so that your liege may do business with us as discreetly as he may need.
And I you. Out of curiosity, can I tell for whom this receipt has been written?
It doesn't... I shouldn't say receipt. It's more of a... almost like a catalog. I think receipt was a poor choice of words.
Fair enough. He'll roll it up and tuck it into his coat.
And the man seems to smile and nod at you, expecting you to turn and go.
And he'll offer his hand. Again, thank you for your time this evening.
And he shakes your hand firmly across the desk.
Tom will rise and wait for his babysitter to...
He has not gone far. He's almost within arm's reach of you as you rise. And he escorts you back out. And soon enough, Cormac and Robert, after maybe 15 minutes, Tom comes back out with the guard, who closes the door behind him and returns to his post.
Tom will extend his hand for his sword.
And he hands it back.
Productive meeting.
Glad to hear it.
But we've still yet to stop by the company of the staple. We'll have to do that on the morrow. It's definitely gotten late. And he'll start to walk away from the office.
Alright. So the group of you part from the company of Mercer's outpost, walking off into the night.
And once they're far enough off, Tom will share the details of that interaction.
What does Cormac make of that?
Oh, you made it again?
Check, check.
There you are.
Okay. I gotta get used to the snowball again. What does he think of what exactly? What Tom said?
Mm-hmm. Of the details of the meeting.
He's wearing a rather wry expression on his face. He did not expect it to go well, after all.
It went as well as could have been expected, given I was surrounded by 4 armed guards and a skeptical steward.
I've told you already I've had dealings with them before. It's always the same story. They have all the power.
Hmm. But to strip a large outpost like York of all personnel and replace them entirely from the ground up, it's curious.
What do you make of it then?
Well, a less paranoid fellow might simply write it off as staffing adjustments. Me, I favor the notion that they're hiding something. They're waiting for someone to come looking for information, someone to question. So doing away with anyone who might know anything and replacing them with people who definitely know nothing does a fair job.
This is the second instance I've run into something of this nature. They're quite thorough in clearing all evidence.
We know someone else like that, and he'll tap his nose.
We know many people like that.
But how many in York?
Ah, I see what you're getting at now. In this vision we had, Eleanor and I, there was a mention by Wulfric that Ragnar couldn't be trusted. And something to do with the Worshipful Company I can't quite remember. But it had to do with that Patrick fellow. It was hard to concentrate looking through someone else's eyes.
I thought to drop that name, but 4 swords to my none. If it had gone south, it would have gone south bad.
Should we consider it just a failed test for now, then?
Not at all. A great wealth of information was had. They're moving significant volumes of a greatly diverse group of goods. They can quickly and affordably outfit thousands of men on relatively short notice. Apparently, they're also providing such goods to a number of mercenary companies and the Royal Army as well.
Why is that surprising?
Who else do we know who happens to have an interest in keeping the Royal Army well armed?
It's a fragile assertion at best.
But a link is a link.
One we can investigate deeper.
Certainly. But it certainly doesn't dissuade any theories. Certainly, in fact, it strengthens some.
Hmm. Does this information change our meeting with Ambrose?
No. But it does reassert my caution regarding Ragnar.
Weren't we already told she'd be bringing an army?
Not this trip. But it does make me even more curious how she might react to news of plans by House Chamberlain to set up shop in York.
Why wouldn't she welcome such a thing? An esteemed member of the Gauntlet.
If you have an iron grasp on trade in a particular region, any threat to it, any at all, can put a fellow on the defensive quite quickly.
Maybe I just wasn't in the business of trade long enough. But I don't see as your company as any competition for the Worshipful Company. I hope I do not offend.
Not at all. I'd rather be small and successful than large and a failure. I don't mean to imply anything at all, of course.
So the plan is to continue to London then?
Yes, but I think at the end of the week, rather than at the end of the month. I'd very much like to be ahead of her.
Won't she think that suspicious?
Well, you have just all brought news from Bristol. News which needs to be acted upon quickly. And we have business in London anyway. And even if I didn't play that card, I could definitely, truthfully say, I have business to conclude in London. And he'll wink at Cormac.
He grins a bit. I don't like it. She won't like it either. She'll wonder what news we brought back from Bristol exactly, since we told her nothing.
That's true. Damn your eyes when you're right.
We can maintain the ruse if we don't all leave at the same time. You go on to London, you have legitimate business there, and we'll stay behind and make a presence of ourselves for a few weeks.
That's possible.
We don't all need to be there to tell Ambrose what's going on.
That's true. But
He doesn't trust me anyway. Then again, he really doesn't trust you either. After the whole Amelia affair.
Precisely.
Well, at least he knows I'm willing to talk.
No, if anyone's going to stay behind, you are. Whatever relationship you have with Dorothy, foster it. Even if neither of you are willing to share your plans with me, I'd very much like to leave them where they are, rather than set Ragna off kilter. I want her to proceed precisely as she has planned already.
So be it.
You and I get along like blue jays, Robert, don't you worry. And that leaves room for you to take Eleanor with you.
I was thinking the same. If she'll have my company at least. More than that, she was there. She saw. I'd simply be presenting hearsay at best.
Well, then there you have it. And he rubs his hands together. We have a plan.
There we are indeed. Though, I do still want to have that chat with Ragna, at the very least.
While you do that, I'll see about digging in my heels a little bit.
I'll join you back at the castle. I may as well book passage now.
I shall see you there.
At the very least, that way I'm not waiting on the vessel. See if I can't schedule it for a few days from now. Give myself time to have one last audience with Ragnar.
Alright. So the group of you make your way back to the castle, minus Long Tom, who goes off to arrange for a ship to leave in a few nights.
For himself and his horse Brigo. And his 29.
And Elenid, perhaps.
And Elena, if she'll come. He'll probably book her passage on.
Alright. And the scene fades on the three of you moving off and Tom splitting off. And as that scene fades, we will close the session for the night, since we're quarter after, and we will pick it up again next week. Good game.
Sweet.
Let us do some entertaining role players. We will start with Cormac.
Oh, dear me. Gosh, that's rough. Can you come back to me?
Yee. Elenid.
I will give it to Thomas.
Tomes. What about you, Thomas?
I'm gonna give it to Cormac. His quick thinking in Bristol with the Alfonso schmuck.
What a schmuck. Robert.
Yeah, I'll give it to Cormac.
Cool. That leaves us with Cormac.
Alright, I am actually going to give it to Elenid for that reason. I was thinking back on our meeting with Alfonso and how she threatened to give him to Kincaid. That was highly entertaining.
Yeah. I
Oh,
love
if not for you, she would have.
Oh, Lord.
That whole scene was good.
Cool, excellent. I know there was a lot of talking and there were some slow scenes, but I'm glad we got through it. And 2 experience all around. Looking forward to next week's game, so I'll talk to you guys throughout the week. Have a good night.
Good night.
Yeah.
Night.